Today, Totally LA is in Santa Monica Art Studios with the acclaimed artist Gwen Samuels. Gwen's unique, one-of-a-kind, three-dimensional art has been exhibited in major galleries and art shows for over a decade. Gwen has invited us into her studio to tell us a bit about her career and how her unique style of art evolved.
Well, welcome. I'm having a wonderful opportunity today to be filmed by Mark from Totally LA, and we're going to be sharing my artwork. I wasn't terribly interested in drawing and painting. I tried it, printmaking, but I really wasn't terribly interested in those art forms. I like the idea of the handmade. So then I went through a period of time where I was using found objects. And honestly, when you look at my work, and that's why I never worry if somebody asks me if they can take pictures of my work, because it's such a process. It's a combination of so many different skills coming together that makes my work. First, I make the sculpture. And then if you look closely, you can see I have a piece of tracing paper here. And what I do is I tape the tracing paper to the form, and then I take a marker and I trace the shape. And you have to press hard because you want the exact form. And once you get that form, okay, you remove the tracing paper, and you can see here's the form. And so I have to go around it to make sure that I can trace it really good. And then I cut it out. And then I'll show you. Okay, I finish this, then I cut this out. And then after I cut it out, so you can get a sense of how labor intensive this really is. And actually, I've been working on this now for several months. And I work on it a couple of hours a day because it's very physical. And okay, so after I have this form, then I take it to the pattern that I'm wanting to put into that place. I lay it down on here. I trace that pattern. And once it's traced, I cut it out again. Okay, so this is after the sculptural form. Okay, I have to fill in all the spaces, and I want to also share with you another part of that decision-making process is I have patterns. So I've decided that I'm going to be using 3 different patterns for this piece, and each pattern is its own textile design, which I take from my over 5,000 images. So here's all these patterns, and then I'm going to cut this out, and then I'm going to poke holes in it, and then sew it directly to the form. And you can see when I hold it up, you can see that there's all these threads hanging. And if you look closely, you can see that it's all hand-stitched. One of the questions that often comes up, and I have to say I've really thought about this a lot, is competition and whether, in an art environment, in a studio, whether you are whether I'm concerned about people copying or, the competition that goes along sometimes with everybody trying to get into galleries and all those kinds of things. And a very good friend of mine is a life coach. And this is a really good phrase that she shared with me, and I say it to myself often. If it's the last piece of art that you're ever going to make, and you are really, really, really needing to protect it, then don't share it, then stay very closed. But I know it's not the last thing I'm ever going to do. And I know that my artwork is based on my mindset, the way I look at things, the way I think about things. So I believe where there's more, there's more. And whenever there's an opportunity that I can share with someone, I share. Whether they share with me, that has nothing to do with me. That has to do with them. So I hope in that environment, everybody is generous. All the earlier work that I was doing was flat. And then I did art from the ashes, and I got a found object, and I stitched my photography to the dimensional object, and I said, oh my God, I can make my own object. It was an amazing turning point for me, but once I realized that I could stitch my work to a found object, my whole world opened up because I realized that I could make my own object. So then I started making sculpture, and I had never done sculpture before. My work is a process, and there are lots of different layers. So if you look closely on the board here, you can see that there are lots of images in repeat patterns, and they are going to be the background of a sort of photography quilt that I'm creating. And I'm piecing all of it together right now. So you can see that I'm going to start placing things together so that there's 3 different variations on the same idea. And so in the end, it's going to be a 9-patch, which is kind of a traditional style quilt, although it won't be quilted. And then I'm going to put this here, and if you look really closely, you can notice that there's going to be, there's 3 styles of dresses, and there's 3 styles of backgrounds. So what I want to do is do 9 variations. And so I'm just giving you a little preview of how it's going to work. And by the way, it may change, but this, I think, is the direction that I'm going. Okay, so you can see that if you look, that's 1, that's 1, that's 1, that's 1, that's 1, that's 1. So they're all going to be related. And then in between, I've got all these little bug borders. So that's how it's going to end up. And it's going to be, like I said earlier, it's probably going to be a 9-patch. And everything is taped now. And that's actually how I work with my flat work. I start with tape. I tape everything together. I see how I like it. And then if you look really closely, you can see it's hand stitched. So I'll be poking holes and stitching it all together. It's very, very sturdy. All the pieces are just hung with tacks. And if it's lit well, then you get a really nice shadow. I have a list of collectors that I try to keep up to date, although sometimes when you donate your work, you don't always find out who's purchased it, which is unfortunate. But very often I run into people and they see what I'm doing and they say, oh, I bought your work at this event, or I bought your work at that event. So it's a good idea if you can to keep track of who is collecting your work. But otherwise, it's just nice to know someone appreciates what you're doing.
Thank you for watching. Please be sure to visit the link to Totally LA below to learn more about Gwen and how to see or purchase her art. And please don't forget to subscribe.